Welcome to the Panic Button anyway. Hey, I'm Nina.
I'm Jessi.
It's Gamby. He's got puppy coughs. Okay, I only got 6 minutes into this video, okay? And then I had to stop because I was getting angry, all right? This is a video from the Young Turks. It's called, If You Know a Teenage Girl, Please Watch This Video. Ready?
No. Yes, I guess. Whatever happens, happens.
This video will probably get demonetized, by the way.
Okay.
Now, a devastating study just released by the Centers for Disease Control found that teenage girls are experiencing record rates of depression, violence, and thoughts of suicide. Given to 17,000 teenagers at public and private high schools across the United States in 2021, found that nearly 1 in 3 adolescent girls seriously considered suicide that year, representing an increase of 60% over the previous decade. I just want to note, the researchers did not give reasons for why this is. They didn't really explore reasons for why this is. So any reasons that we might think of are just speculation, of course. But think about the year here. It's 2021. We're talking about teenage girls. A lot of people were still at home. A lot of schools were still shut down. Students aren't able to socialize the way they would be able to if things weren't shut down. So I think about that and the importance of socializing when you're young, especially. And I think that probably played a role. But again, that's not what the study said because they didn't really give reasons for this. Let me keep going.
Go
ahead.
I have theories on it too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys will have theories on it.
13% of the respondents said that they had attempted suicide in the past year, while 7% of boys reported the same, and 57% of girls said they felt persistently sad or hopeless almost every day for at least 2 weeks in a row, a possible indication of the experience of depressive symptoms, according to the CDC report. This story makes me want to cry. It's so depressing.
So before I continue on with this, what do you think the reason is for why teenage girls are so depressed?
Social media.
Elaborate.
I mean, it comes down to social media. Girls have always felt some form of resistance, inadequacy, less than. Mm-hmm. That's just girls in general. You go to the prettiest girl and she still doesn't feel like she has enough. And when you metastasize something like that and just exacerbate it to the point where that's all they can focus on and post about and get attention for, it becomes a problem. And when you have stuff like social media, that's where they can brag about it, that's where they can show it off. And I think it's a real big problem, especially in schools. Now, I was a part of the percent that probably 5 years ago was on the would probably do something like that scale. However, my question is, how much of this is for attention and how much of it is genuine? When you say that you've been feeling persistent feelings of sadness every day for 2 weeks, are you really thinking back for 2 weeks? Are you just saying yes?
Good question.
And I don't want to put that kind of energy out in the world because I am someone who's suffered through this kind of stuff and I don't want to doubt anyone, especially a child going through that kind of scenario because I know how real it was and I had probably my worst attempts when I was in my teen years. Absolute worst attempts. So please don't take this negatively, but how much of it is real and how much of it is because your parents aren't paying attention to you, which is a very real reason that a lot of people try and do stuff like this. I had a friend at one point who genuinely said that she knows it's a terrible reason, but she wanted to unalive herself because she wanted her mom to feel something for her, which is terrible, but it's how she felt very genuinely. And so social media and parents, that's what I blame. How about you? What are you thinking?
So I've had depression ever since I was 10, and I've tried to unalive myself more times than I would like. I can't even count anymore. In my teens, 20s, and 30s. So I would have to say that one of the big things that I've noticed that made me go back into my bad depression was TikTok. Now, why? Because if you're scrolling through constantly, and you're only seeing pretty people with nice bodies who have nice things, that's going to make you feel so inadequate and so low, so lesser than. If you're scrolling through a whole bunch of people who are living on the street, who don't have anything, who have nothing to brag about, you might feel a little bit differently. But already being a teenage girl, knowing what it's like to be a teenage girl, being completely feeling like garbage.
Isolated. You feel isolated.
You're not popular enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not fit enough. Nobody likes you. They're always talking behind your back because girls around that age Most of them do.
And the sad thing is that, like, you will never accept this information as a teenage girl, but
And-
it's because you're growing and you're a teenage girl.
Another thing about teenage girls is they like to be in groups. They have to be a part of a group in order to feel accepted. So if a teenage girl doesn't have a group of friends, she feels even more isolated and more depressed because she has nobody, right? And then going on TikTok and seeing all these people who have all this stuff just makes her feel even worse, to the fact, like, where she's in her room herself because she's so alone. And her parents don't get it because they're working to support the household, so they don't have time to even
They don't
really
have the money to have the time.
to think about their kid, so the kid kind of gets lost in the sauce. And meanwhile, they're probably getting made fun of because they're loners and because kids are assholes. First and foremost, they're assholes. And if one of their friends is making fun of someone, it's like a parrot thing. They all start doing it because, oh, now it's cool. Right? Everyone's doing it, so now it's cool. So let's make fun of the kid who has no friends. Next thing you know, that kid is like getting harassed, beat up, they kill themselves. It all has to do with the social media and the kids that they're surrounded by. Absolutely.
The numbers are growing by leaps and bounds.
Yes.
13% of teenage girls didn't think about suicide, tried to commit suicide.
Also, I just realized something. You think maybe it's like a social contagion as well because
That's
it's
why I was
so
asking
popular. You get so many more likes if you're messed up. If you have some sort of mental illness, you're on the spectrum, you're
Cutting
bipolar. Yeah.
Scars are now a conversation starter.
It's like the more messed up you are, the more likes you get.
As someone who used to self-harm, when someone asks me about my scars, I don't tell them about them. I never tell them about them. I will refuse left, right, and center to get attention for them because that was never my goal. So when people put them, I told you about the X, put them on their arm, even marks, and then put these words across, didn't even try to hide them. That is so messed up, manipulative, and vain. You want people to talk with you about how you're so upset that you cut yourself and then remind yourself every single day about it.
And also, alcohol is a depressant, so how many of these people are also drinking? I mean, they're young, right? But drinking has always been popular. And I know when I was in high school, a lot of the kids I knew drank. So if you have that on top of your depression,
Yeah,
just a theory.
You know, you said you got your depression when you were about 10. I was about the same age. It was when my grandfather passed. I remember, like, the onset of it. And we moved in with my grandma about a year or two later. But I specifically remember raiding the liquor cabinet at, like, 12 years old and getting super f***ed up. And that's when I first started trying to kill myself. So
57% reporting persistently sad or hopeless. That's a huge majority of teenage girls in this country. That's like a enormous iceberg of an epidemic that nobody's talking about.
Yep.
Wow.
High rates of depression and suicidal ideation among teenage girls was almost certainly linked to another finding in the survey, which is that 14% of girls reported that they had been forced to have sex, which is actually an increase of 27% since the last time the survey was taken back in 2019. The rate of sexual assault was even higher among queer teenagers, with 20% of them reporting that they had been forced. You got to take into account, I mean, Cenk mentioned social media when we were at break, and I think that's also part of it. There have been completely other, like, different studies that looked into the impact of social media on the mental health of adolescents, both, you know, girls and boys. But think about the insane standards of beauty that's constantly depicted on social media, how people tend to post the best side of their lives on social media, which tends to make others think that their lives are just terrible because it's not perfect and glossy like what they see on Instagram or whatever.
But I want to give you one more fact because it leads to a second theory. So graphic 5, among teenagers, the CDC identified as LGBTQ+, they left out the T, and so they're not in the survey. 69% reported feeling persistent sadness for at least 2 weeks in a row. 22% of LGBTQ+ adolescents said they had attempted. Wow. If you include transgender people in there, the numbers will be even higher. Probably. We don't know because it's not in the poll, in the survey.
plus.
But
plus
but we do
includes
know
it.
from other surveys that their numbers are the highest, right? 69%, 7 out of 10 feeling despondent. 22% tried. Again, gigantic epidemic. I mean, it's unbelievable, those numbers. I mean,
Okay, before he says something stupid, he's going to say something stupid real quick. Before that, I want to ask you, why do you think among the LGBTQ plus are we more depressed and even though we're more accepted now than we've ever been?
You see, it's hard because, like I just said to you, that I was in a very similar situation to these girls, right? The big difference, I had the exception of not actually being accepted around my immediate area. But it doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of people, like especially people whose moms are out there parading about how they're so proud, they're so proud, they're so proud. I feel like a lot of it has to do with that social contagion. Everyone, it's the new emo. Like emo, emo, emo. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. Talk to anyone in Gen Z. I don't love myself tomorrow. Like, hit me with a car. Like, and I say it, but when I say it, it comes from the depths of my soul. When they say it, they think it's a
They
joke.
post it on social media.
Every time. People laugh at me all the time, and they laugh it off. And I'm like, laugh it off as much as you want. You think it's funny. It's the goddamn truth. It's my generation's humor is so dry and calloused that it's self-eating. It's just like slowly dying and eating itself. And so what do we get for the kids? People who are super, super depressed. Nobody pays attention to them. They're seeing the habits. And when you're told there's nothing to live for, what are you going to live for?
My opinion is, I think, well, we're both lesbians, if you didn't already know that, but the LGBTQ plus group is the most, like, vicious, unaccepting group of people. I mean, you just scroll through TikTok and it's
Combat.
constantly. No one is getting along. Everyone's hating on everyone else. There's constant infighting. There's no acceptance here. It's just you follow our rules. You say what we say. You think the way we think, or get the f*** out. That's how they are. That's why I don't agree with the freaking group anymore. You know, I'm completely freaking against it, especially when they're bringing in chomos and shit. Like, no, thank you. I'm out. Y'all can fight by yourselves. I'm gonna go that way. We're both technically part of the LGBTQ because we're both lesbians.
Yes.
Right.
Technically.
We've both been and still are people who've suffered with depression, self-harm, and unaliving attempts. So coming from our perspective, I think the group is just not accepting. The LGBTQ group is like the mean girl popular group in high school.
I think that this forced ideology is causing a lot of kids also to just not know who they are.
And to be even more confused.
It's already so confusing to be a kid. And like I said, it was difficult for me because I couldn't figure out who I was because everyone else was telling me who to be, which is how a lot of kids have their lives in one way or another.
Now they're just told to be a certain way on social media.
Kids are so used to being told what to do, right? Told what to be. And now you're being told, here's a book of a million things. Choose, you're a unicorn, you're a rainbow. You can be a man, you can be a woman, you can be this, you can be that, you can have all this freedom.
That's so confusing. That's just a mind and a
But I'm in
scramble for a
charge of
child's
you.
brain, man.
But I'm in charge of you and you have to listen to me. And da-da-da-da. It's very confusing.
It is a lot for one child to take on. That amount of information, especially when their brains are not fully developed.
When they're infants, you set a schedule, a feeding schedule, and you schedule baths and you schedule everything like that to give them structure. You are in charge of making sure that these young little lives have structure and don't end up being like this. You can try like crazy, but when you're mentally unwell, you're mentally unwell. And there's a real shot at helping these kids, but not giving them structure and allowing them to surf through the internet like crazy is not the way to do it.
Okay, so this gets to the political part of it. So social media is not at all political, and that's a massive problem, and some issues are political, some aren't, right? But the politics of it, there's constant attacks against LGBTQ people, including LGBTQ kids, right? Hey, you're not allowed to teach about gay people in school because they're so bad and awful and terrible, right? Transgender kids. And guys, the right wing says the number one problem in America, and they don't say necessarily number one, but they've been addressing it as if it's the number one problem, is transgender girls on high school sports teams.
Number one issue.
Meanwhile, 22% of LGBTQ kids are trying to commit. That is an enormous number of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids that is such a bigger problem. That's a monumentally bigger problem. But nobody talks about it.
Right.
I think the whole trans women invading women's spaces things, especially when they're kids and they aren't allowed to say what they want to say because they'll be completely shunned. Maybe they won't get scholarships or college offers or anything like that.
They'll get called down to the principal's
can't.
office.
They'll get called down to the principal's office. Maybe they'll make them see a shrink because, well, what's wrong with you that you don't like seeing in your little girl bathroom?
Well, don't you know it's a hateful thing? Don't you know it's transphobic to say something against this? Don't you know this, that, and the other thing?
Yeah. Yeah, the whole trans girls thing, trans women thing, yeah, it's a big problem. And it's only a problem for women and girls. Men don't have this issue. Boys don't have this issue. Girls do. But you know what the problem is? Girls can't freaking talk about it. They can't actually say how they freaking feel because they will get completely isolated, shunned, hated, bullied, canceled, not get opportunities. So I think that's a big problem.
The fact that he tried to diminish is a real issue to me because two issues can be issues at the same time. If you're drowning and your leg is broken and you're bleeding out from it, both those things could kill you. Mm-hmm. Which one's going to kill you first is the real question, right? Mm-hmm. But they both hold relevance, no matter which way you swing. I wanted to cover something that he said at the very beginning, which is that he said social media isn't political, like it's not right, left wing, and that's a problem. I don't believe that social media should be left or right winged. I believe it should always stay in the middle because social media is essentially a public forum. Okay, if you want to have a site that's specifically dedicated to left or right view, that's fine. That's why they have different sites and different apps for different intentions, for different people to meet with different people that want to meet with the same views. However, people like places like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, those should not be left right wing places because they are social forums. If Reddit was left or right winged, we'd have a big issue because we wouldn't have as much information presented to the world as we do. If Google was left or right winged, which it kind of is, but if it was completely in one direction, we'd have a problem. I don't agree with that. And it's not a problem that it isn't separated. It's a problem that he thinks it should be.
He's a problem.
He's got some interesting takes, dude. I agree it's very unfortunate. As one of the girls from 2017 who would have been on that survey, it's very unfortunate. But it's also really unfortunate that I would have lost a lot of opportunities to more men.
Yeah.
Biological men, sorry.
And to put a fork in it, nobody's listening to these girls.
No.
And they can't speak because they're not allowed to. They're quieted. So they're only allowed to say that they're depressed.
No one was
But
listening.
they're not allowed to say how they feel. How they really freaking feel. They're not allowed to say.
No one's ever listened to these girls. Like you said, in the 90s. Like I said, in the late 2010s. No one's listened to these girls. So you can sit there and complain that they're depressed, but if you don't listen, congratulations. You're just adding to the number. Like
Yeah.
and subscribe.
And this asshat right here saying that, oh, well, the bathroom thing with trans women and then, invading women's sports isn't a big deal. It's like, wow. I bet it is actually a really big deal to a lot of girls who can't say anything, and you just completely dismissed it.
All of them.
So now you just dismissed a lot of little girls out there who are depressed and very worried about this. Just dismissed them. Thanks for being a typical, really left-wing man who says a trans woman is a woman but won't fuck her. Like and subscribe.
And you're telling the people on Leah Thomas's team that it's not a big deal.
You mean the man who was, like, flashing these girls in the frickin' locker room? You know that's like a kink. You know men do that to little kids on the playground. Yeah, it's a flasher.
Yeah, there's an actual other name for it though, but I can't remember the name of it.
We'll get it. Did you hit stop?
Self-exposed? No. Did you?
No.